All right, everyone, we are jumping into a fun topic here because we're actually jumping into the Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 2 licensing. Now, this particular license set here is, we'll call it the more advanced, and yes, it does require additional payment or one of those pricey M5 licenses. But again, as you see on here, some of the things that you will notice is, well, honestly, they're kind of worth the price of admission. But let's jump right into it here. So identity protection is the first piece we're going to talk about here. Identity protection gives us, on top of multi-factor authentication and conditional access, this is a way to analyze risk at user sign-in. Okay, so as the users are signing in, we're able to analyze risk. And I'll explain how this works and what risk essentially is. But just a caveat here, this does require the Azure AD Premium Plan 2 license. But what is risk? So as users log in, we can use machine learning to analyze in real time the chance that credentials have been compromised. Now, I have this wonderful document on here, and it explains much more, and I want to go with you. I want to go over it with you and make more sense. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it here just to bring it up. But risk is so many different things here. But again, as a user is signing into Office 365, we are capturing the IP address, we're capturing the geographic location, we're capturing the location, as well as the application itself of what we're trying to log into, among many other things, of course. But what is risk as it goes? So let's look at some of these here. We have sign-in risk, and then we have user risk. So sign-in risk here is one that is called, we have atypical travel. So this one here is basically like, hey, for the most part, every day for the past year, you've logged in from, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, every day, and then all of a sudden, one day you log in from Seattle, Washington. Now that's atypical, but it's not necessarily wrong, and it's nothing malicious per se. So what it does is it assesses that, okay, well maybe that's a little bit different than your normal one, so we're going to raise up your risk just a smidge. Then we're going to start looking at some other factors around it here too. We have an anomalous token. Is that, hey, this session token was taken over, it was hijacked, something along those lines there. Well, we can look at that and essentially assess that as well. And depending on the case here, we can essentially kind of raise up the risk a little bit more. Suspicious browser. Maybe you're logging in from a browser that has suspicious sign-in activity. Maybe we're logging in and it's got lots of session tokens on it and such. That happens for me to time because I'm logging into many different customer ones. Malware linked IP address. This is another one. I'm coming from an IP address and a location here that is been linked recently to malware. Now, how does Microsoft know that? Remember, 6.5 trillion signals a day. So they're able to figure out that, okay, well, we've determined that we've had 8,000 malwares from this one IP address. All right, that's a high risk. We're going to increase the risk on the user. Again, unfamiliar sign-in locations. I'm coming in from a location that is not normal for me. There's lots of things that come along with that too. Could be a new IP, a new location, whatever it is. We have malicious IP address. Remember, now again, we can do from malware, but we can also say malicious IP addresses too, is that again, we have known that these are known based off of IP reputation. These are known ones that are bad, and we don't use those before. We can do password sprays. We can start looking at these. Now, these are all offline. Okay. The impossible travel here is one that is probably the most important here, is really around the idea of, again, I'm going with Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm logging in from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 5 minutes later, I'm logging in from somewhere in South Korea. That's impossible. It is way impossible for you to travel from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to South Korea in 5 minutes. Impossible. That raises risk very heavy. You're coming in from a new country. Again, this is a very common vector. Anonymous IP addresses, all of these different things, and you can see all the ones that are on there. These are all things that are happening in the back end as the sign-in is happening. Okay, so it's essentially taking these and attributing them to your users as they're signing in. Okay, so what ends up happening there is we can do, these are non-premium, so these are ones that kind of automatically happen here. Don't worry about those. We'll come to those in time. Then we have these user risks. So we have sign-in risk, which is, again, based off of the time of signing in. Then we have user risk. So what is the chance of, so again, the user or sign-in risk is basically what's the chances of that the compromised is happening or attempting to be happen, and somebody is trying to attempt to log in as somebody else. Whereas user risk is what's the chances of the actual user account being compromised. So we see we have this premium one here, which is a primary refresh token. Again, it's a session hijacking scenario. We can see that Microsoft Defender for Endpoint generally picks this up. Don't worry too much about the nitty-gritties of it here. Just understand that this is a common scenario where, hey, leaked credentials. Remember when I talked about this before? Where that we're looking at dark web, paste sites, trading and selling credentials on the black market. Microsoft is looking at all of these. They have cybersecurity experts that are doing these and infiltrating into these honeypots and such, looking for all of those. So as the sign-in risk starts going up, the user risk starts going up. And we can have certain things happen depending on what the risk level is. But here's the factor. We have no control over these. These things are automatically happening in the back end and attributing risk to our users. As they're signing in, they're coming in from a different location. Maybe that's something different. Who knows? We don't really know, but there are ways to essentially that we can look at, and that's what we're going to jump into here in just a second, where we're able to start looking at some of these factors on here. So let's jump into the lab here and start configuring some risk policies. They're actually really easy, but I'll show you what we can do here. And I think they're actually very, very useful. So I'm going to stop this one here. We'll jump over into the lab, and I'll see you on that one.